One of the unique things on this staircase is that the handrail is below the top rail so that you can slide your boat either direction. So it was one of those things where I'm like, why are we doing it this way? Why do we need this? It's like, well, that's how they get the boats up.
Smart and weird.
Neat idea. So yeah, that's right as you go up 503 and then turn on the other, I can't remember what road it is that goes down towards Amboy, right there by Yale Bridge, as soon as you cross over, it's on the south side. So that's a great access point to think about. And then next slide. Yeah, the other one, and you can access that same area by coming out of Crescent Bay campground down here, just kind of go around the corner, it's a little bit further paddle. The other is our Spiliae Bay Park. There's some area in there. I was up kokanee fishing about a month ago, and I counted 4 open kayakers who were fishing, and they were trolling either with a little electric motor or by pedaling, and they were just out fishing this area right in here. And they actually, one of them did much better than I did. So I don't know if that helps or just the example of my poor fishing. Okay, next one. This one is a little ways from you. This is over in at our Cutler Hydroelectric project in Northeast Utah. So if you're ever out there traveling by Logan, if you're familiar with Logan, Utah, we have it's a very large reservoir over there. It's very shallow and there are a lot of associated wetlands with it. And one of the things that we did working with Richard Land Audubon and some of the other interest groups over there was to actually develop formal canoe trails through the wetlands. And so there are 3 different trails over there. I encourage you to check out Richard Land Audubon's and just say wetland maze and it'll pop up and show you the trails there. So if you're traveling through and have an interest to go over there. Next slide. Okay, talked a little bit about whitewater. We've got 4 projects where we actually provide water at certain times of the year for people to go whitewater. And so we take what was going to generation at the hydro project, turn it into the river, provide a boatable flow, a safe boatable flow, and then for a day or 2, sometimes just a matter of hours, and then it goes back to generation. And what it does is it extends the opportunity for whitewater in certain communities, like Big Fork, Montana, on the Swan River. We do it every Wednesday night until we get to a certain low flow, and then we don't. So Wednesday afternoon, everybody's running up there to go do their whitewater. Weaver River, that's over near Ogden. Bear River near Grace, Idaho. So, and then down on the road near Prospect, there's a short reach there, and I think we provide 3 weekends of opportunity. So, if you have an interest in whitewater, there you go. Next. Okay, I'm talking a little bit, switching the fish and wildlife here. And this is going to be focused on the Lewis River. You saw this project before. So when Merwin Dam went in the 1930s, that blocked all fish passage to the upper basin, blocked over 100 miles of habitat for salmon and steelfish. And so at the time, they tried to kind of put a trap where they collect some salmon and put them over the dam, but there was really no way for those salmon to get out. So in the end, that was kind of a little bit of a failure, and I think it was just because technology wasn't there. And so we built fish hatcheries. So we've been operating fish hatcheries. Well, when we recently went through our licensing back around 2004, there was a large interest to get fish passage to that upper basin. And so we agreed on that, to do that. And so I'm just going to kind of show you how we do that right now. These are the species of interest. These are all listed on their Endangered Species Act. For those of you who aren't familiar with bull trout, that's a resident fish. Pretty much stays in the reservoir. They will become anadromous every once in a while and go out. We sometimes see them go out as small smolts. We have yet to get any of them back, coming back, trying to get back up the river. So we monitor that population, really focusing on establishing wild runs upstream of the project. That's our goal. Self-sustaining, naturally producing, harvestable fish. So, and we're making some good progress there. Next slide. So right now, what we're doing is we collect fish here at Merwin Dam and then put them on a truck and take them all the way up here to Eagle Cliff, release them up there. That allows them to access about 80 miles of habitat that is upstream of Swift Dam. We're right now in the starting the design process of putting fish passage facilities here at Yale and here at Swift. Ultimately will allow us to put fishing here, and those fish could go over each one. You notice when I showed you those pictures, those were pretty high-head big dams. Can't really build fish ladders over those, so these are going to be systems where the fish swim in, they get trapped, they get put on a truck, and we take them up and release them. And then the idea being with these intermediary facilities that fish get to go where they want to go. So by opening up Merwin, I think we opened up about 6 miles of habitat and 18 miles of habitat with you. Okay, next slide. So this is a picture of Merwin Dam in our fish facility, and kind of talk you through how this works. So when fish come in, they can come all the way up to here. We have a little fish entrance over here and that goes into the trap. The fish swim in and they're elevated up to here with an elevator that runs every 15 minutes. They go down what I call the slip and slide over here into this big swimming pool where every morning my fish team shows up and we put them to sleep and we say, it's a hatchery fish. It goes in this tank and goes to the hatchery, or this is a native fish, it goes upstream, or this is we do a lot of monitoring evaluation. So we radio tag fish to see where they go in the upper watershed, how far they go. Are they dispersing or are they only using one area? There's all sorts of things like that we do. That facility operates year round. Yes, sir.
How do you separate the hatchery fish from the native fish?
So almost all hatchery salmon have a little fin on their back called an adipose fin, and it's clipped off.
So humans are sorting this?
Yeah. So the biologists come in every morning, and so they'll put them to sleep, and they come across the table, and they'll look at it, and they'll go, spring chinook hatchery female, and they'll go down or shoot into and so we start to separate them. Because ideally what we want is every fish that comes in that's a wild fish, that doesn't have that clip, that has the fin intact, we want to send upstream. Okay, the hatchery program is being modified a little bit to, we're using some of those wild fish to integrate genetics and expand the genetic fitness of the hatchery fish. So we're starting to move that direction. The problem over the years of the hatchery is that hatchery people, when a fish came in, they would always take the biggest one. And so you start to get, the genetic fitness of the fish start to decrease. And so that's reflected in run timing. So now, 2 weeks out of the year, all the fish are coming back when they used to come back over 4 months, And so we're trying to get back. Ideally, we want fish coming back almost every day of the year. There shouldn't be a reason why one of those species shouldn't be coming back.
And where do the hatchery fish go? I mean, the natives still upstream.
Right. So the hatchery fish go down to the hatchery, which is like 2 miles away. So
and they just lounge in their chair.
The hatchery. So at the appropriate time when they're ready to spawn, the hatchery will spawn them. And then I think the hatchery, our hatchery production is 2 million coho eggs a year. 125,000 spring chinook. I can't remember how many steelhead.
So if we have to show right place, right time, it would be with the hatchery fish.
Yeah. You show up at in the lower river during coho season. First, you got to find a place to park. Because there's so many fishermen fishing right by that hatchery to get what's coming back, because the hatchery has a trap too. So that's the other piece where they may catch some of our wild fish, I call them ours, that will go upstream. So very interesting, I think, last year we had 45,000 coho back. So you can get quite a few fish back in the fall. Yes.
So you mentioned that there's an elevator for the fish
Yeah.
to bring them up. Is it essential to trap them and transport them to the upper end? Or can you just use the elevator as a kind of fish ladder, automated fish ladder, so that you don't have to catch, pull, I think you
Yeah.
mentioned that you get them to sleep or something?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
transport.
Ultimately, this system could do that, but because there haven't been any fish up there for 80 years or whatever it was, right? We're trying to rebuild that run. And so you want to take the fish, each fish that returns, each wild fish is a gift. And so you want to get it to the point where it has its best success. Merwin Reservoir, to be honest with you, is not its best success spot. It's up in the upper watershed, up on the flanks of Mount St. Helens, where you have good, clean water and habitat. So you've got this, that's where we're taking. Now, over time, there's going to be a lot of fish that will just go over. And at some point, I would love to see us get automated so we don't even select fish, right? Any fish that comes in trap just goes over. Someday we'll get there. Yes.
But do the fish get confused by if you grab them and truck them? Because I've heard that they are sensitive to the sense, the smells, the place of origin. And
Right.
if I drop ship, parachute them into some other place.
Yeah, no, that is true. They key in on their native streams, right? And so a couple of things there. So in putting fish back up there, the only fish that we had put up there were hatchery fish that didn't even come from up there, right? So now you have hatchery fish initially for when the program started, like, what am I doing in this foreign country? This doesn't even smell like home. All right, but still, I'm in the mood. So, they laid eggs and we had juveniles coming out. Well, now those juveniles have just been imprinted on that stream, right?
Yeah.
So over time, and as the population expands, you want them to go into different streams. And we actually started putting them in different streams in the hopes that each stream then would have its own population. So the idea too with the intermediary facilities is that as fish come out, if we put them back, we put some into Yale and they're like, no, I want to be upstream. They'll just swim upstream, get collected again and taken upstream. The idea being we're bridging these reservoirs and areas so that fish ultimately can get to where they want to be. So that's the plan. Hopefully we'll get there soon. Yes.
I do have a chat.
Okay.
So question on the chat, is it possible to move the barrier 1,000 feet upstream past the confluence of Canyon Creek in Upper Lake Merwin so we can get up to view the waterfalls?
So I think the question is referring to the boat barrier, and that's at the top of Merwin Reservoir. And so you start in on that passage and eventually you get to a boat barrier because we start to get into security issues. You're getting really close to the plant, plus safety issues as well. And so that our dam safety is the ones who determined where that barrier went in. I didn't get to choose that, but I think that's typically why you have tail race barriers. You have one downstream of Merwin too. If you go down to our Merwin launch for the boat, there you turn and look and there's a boat barrier right there. And I mean, you can't even really see the hydro project because it's a little bit around the corner, but it's all for dam safety and public safety as well. And then the waterfalls, I don't know which waterfalls are there. I'm sure somebody has seen them, but they're, yeah.
Right past.
Right past the barrier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I
Not that you went, oh. I've heard. That's, yeah. Great question. Okay. All right, so that is our upstream facility where we're collecting and taking salmon upstream right now. Next question, or next slide. So those fish go upstream, they spawn, they have juveniles that come back out. Those juveniles want to get to the ocean. They have 3 big reservoirs that they've got to get through. How do you get them past that reservoir? And so we've built this thing out here called a floating surface collector. Now, if you're a juvenile salmon and you're trying to get out to the ocean, you can't swim very well by yourself, so you're always going with the flow, right? And so you're kind of just going with the ride down the river. They hit the reservoir, there's no real flow, so they start swimming around. So what we're doing with this facility is it has a whole bunch of pumps on it, and we're pumping water trying to mimic an outflow of the lake. Okay, so they come down, they hit the net, they kind of swim over by that entrance, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, there's some flow, I'm gonna go check this out. So they start to check it out, and then next thing they know it, the river inside here is going too fast, and they can't get out, and then they end up in a tank. And then we lift the tank up, put them on a truck, take them all the way down to Woodland, Washington, and let them go down there. So they get a ride upstream and a ride downstream. And that, this facility operates pretty much year round. It can go up and down with the reservoir even during flood control. The only time we turn it off is basically for maintenance in July and August. Water quality gets really warm and we get like 5 fish a day. And it's like, no, this is very expensive to run. It was very expensive to build. And so we just, it's not good for the fish to be up there in that. They all go elsewhere, so we turn it off and do our maintenance. So just, so since I reminded myself of the cost, give you an idea of the flavor of the cost, that Merwin facility that I showed you just for the fish stuff alone was about $50 million. And this facility here was $60 million. So pretty heavy investment for fish. We plan to build something similar to that on Yale. With Merwin, we'll be able to just kind of do a half one of those where we hopefully can just collect the fish and then put them in a pipe and let them go right below the dam. We don't have to put them on trucks to get them around the dam there. That's the intent. And then much smaller facilities in Merwin, because we don't expect to have as many fish going upstream if we continue the truck. Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is this working?
It's working.
So we're taking native fish, going up, spawning in the upper river, coming back, and they're getting a ride out to the ocean, and they're coming back again, maybe?
And they're coming back again.
Right.
Yeah. So, I think this year so far, we've had 45,000 smolts go out, and we're not even in the peak season yet. So this year is setting up to be a really good year. But yeah, so it's all about, trying to get the fish where they need to do and wild fish. Yes, sir.
Original lot of expenses, is this funded through ratepayers? Or is the government paying for this or
No.
county fees?
No, it's all ratepayers. So the federal government says, in order to have these hydro projects, you have to provide fish passage. And so, our customers receive the benefit of the hydropower. And, we do a lot of cost analysis on, is it affordable? Does it still keep our power price from this facility? How is that comparable if you had to go out to market to buy power, right? And up on the Lewis River, because of the size of the project, it can afford stuff like this. A lot of our small projects, it's like, we can't do much, right? And that's where you start to see, and there's a great segue to go into decommissioning of why the company has, said, okay, we'll decommission like Condit Dam.
So a fishing license, those kinds of
Nope.
things, don't pay this.
So all ratepayers throughout our 6 western states, which gets really complicated when somebody in Wyoming is helping to pay for this. So, yes, sir.
If you're trapping fish to swim, then why would you want to put a floating collector in Yale?
So eventually we want to release fish into Yale and into Merwin. And so in order to get those fish out of that reservoir, we're going to have a floating system. Schedule for that is 2027, 2028 is when we'll get going, start constructing, and hopefully get those in operation. So, all right, let's go on to the next one. Just real quick, our wildlife program. Love this program. I mentioned the bright yellow, about 15,000 acres. Almost all of that is managed for wildlife. We have a lot of elk up there. One of the neat things is that we recently, in that up above Swift, purchased about 4,000 acres. Unfortunately, it was timberlands, and you get really good deals on clear cuts, which allowed us, fortunately, to buy a lot of land up there, but it also gave us a blank canvas. And so our wildlife team is able to go up there, do a little bit more, clean up the clear cut, not plant as a monoculture, right? To do different pockets of different types of trees. But one of the things up there is that the forest is not, over the years, the forest doesn't provide the forage and nutrient value to elk and other big game that it once did. Okay, and so we are actively putting in meadows so that the elk have places to go. And so what's happening now is that we see a lot of elk, and this lower picture is a good one, that are coming into our meadows. All of this land, unless it's very close to our operations, is open for hunting. And so we now have a lot of people hunting on our lands because it's better hunting. Just because the elk are down there because the habitat's better. There's more nutrients. One of the cool things that we're working on right now in this lower right hand is pollinator habitat, monarch butterfly, soon to be listed under ESA, unfortunately. You have other bees and insects that really need that type of habitat. And so we've got rights away through the project that we're working on certain seed mixes and things like that to enhance that. So some of the cool stuff that's going on there. A lot of this management of this land is done with input from the Cowlitz Indian tribe, Yakima Nation, Indian Nation, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and of course, the Forest Service is engaged with. So kind of this great cooperative group that we work on. Next slide. All right, talk a little bit about Condit, Klamath decommission, wrapping it up here. So we talked about costs, right? And what is required for us to keep these projects and operate them. So this is a great example. Condit Dam, which is here down in the lower right-hand corner, built in 1911, 1912. They tried to put fish passage on it, a fish ladder, built it out of wood. It washed out the first year. Tried it again, washed out. They just couldn't get a fish ladder to go there. And so ended up doing mitigation through hatchery. So the habitat upstream of Condit was blocked, much as it was on the Lewis. And so when we went into get a new license to operate this project, one of the things that the federal government said was, you need to provide fish passage. And so we said, okay, let's look at a trap and haul system like we have up on the Lewis. And they said, in this case, no, you have to build fish. And you have to put in screens to bypass those fish. You can't do a trap. And after years of arguing, they have the authority to tell us that we have to do that. And so we costed out what it would take to build a fish ladder that was essentially half a mile long along a steep canyon. If you've ever been on the White Salmon and rafted it, you know how that is down through there. And then to put in a screen that was gonna cost, well, you know, 80, $90 million to do that. Okay, this is a project that only produces 14 megawatts. On average, across the year produces 7 megawatts, which is essentially 2 windmills nowadays with the new technology, right? All right, so business person, 90 million, what's it gonna cost to decommission this? And we looked at decommissioning, the estimate was that it was about $24 million. So the company said, okay, we'll consider decommissioning this, taking this project out. But you know, there are a couple things that need to be considered here. And that is, there's a whole lot of sediment that had piled up off Mount Adams behind the dam. And to dredge it would have cost tens of millions of dollars. So it was like, all right, let's come up with an agreement here. No dredging, no cost to us, and we'll agree to remove the dam. And that's what was agreed to. And so it took a number of years to actually get to breach day. Part of that was the local community was opposed to the dam coming out. And so that took a while to work through. Eventually, we worked with the county and their constituents to get to a point where things were taken care of, their concerns were met. Before we did
Their
breach.
resistance was because the benefit they derived from the upper recreational.
Yeah.
Accessibility to lovely hot water.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we own the land around the reservoir and we lease it to about 60 cabin sites. And majority of those cabin sites, you walk out onto your dock, hop in your canoe or your little boat, and it used to be stocked by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and great fishery, right? I mean, it's like, who wouldn't want a cabin on a little lake like that, right? I know I would.
What's the name of that lake?
It was Northwest Lake. It was the name of it, and the project's Condit. Northwest used to own the project. That's what it's called. Back before PacifiCorp.
White Salmon River.
White Salmon River. No, it's the White Salmon River. Little White Salmon is just one basin over. Okay, so over here, you have salmon, you have coho, you have big fall chinook. Historically, you had bull trout in the area as well. And so that's, you know, this would benefit those species by providing access to habitat up there, sea run, cutthroat, lampreys. So took a little while to get us here, but then we got to the breach day. So this lower picture, you can actually see the dynamite going off and the debris flowing out. That's what the lake looked like. 2 hours later, next slide. That's what the lake looked like.
Wow.
60, not that.
Yeah. And so it drained really fast. A lot of that sediment sloughed off and went down through the 3 miles lower river and landed in the Columbia. And so now you have new delta off the white salmon in the Columbia. One of the concerns down there was to the shipping channel. You have all the barges going through, and it went right up to the shipping channel. It's essentially stopped. And we had made the commitment that if it did go in this, if it reached a certain depth of the shipping channel, we were going to have to go out and dredge it, but it never did. And so it's been monitored. That is just sitting there. Every time the Columbia gets kind of a high flow, the top layer kind of peels off a little bit, but it's going to be there. The kiteboarders love it because now they come flying across and they can, if they jump off the board, they're like this deep in water so they have kind of a little beachy, shallow area over there. That's what it looks like. Obviously, you don't want to leave it like that. So let's go to the next slide. But first you have to take out the dam. So what we did was we had a contractor, J.R. Merritt, someone we were talking about. Yep, we were talking about J.R. Merritt, working with a local logging company and some other local folks just working on busting this thing apart. And so basically, they had huge hammers, just sit there and bust all day, bang, 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 to break it down in the rubble and then put it on dump trucks and haul it to the disposal site. We took the flow line down. Unfortunately, the flow line was all treated timber, so that had to be taken to landfill and couldn't be salvaged. We took all the stuff out of the powerhouse, you know, the transformers and all the moving equipment, and basically mothballed the powerhouse down there. Building's still there, but you know, it took them a year to basically get this down to where it is there. You can see the river kind of going through here. Next slide. So this is what it looks like looking, I'm upstream now of the project, looking downstream. So that red line was the top of the concrete arc dam. So everything from there all the way down into the river bed was taken out. It was kind of cool. I was there at the end and there was excavators and he was reaching out and there was a person who was down basically right by the river telling him, okay, put the bucket out further, because he couldn't see what he was doing. And he was just banging underwater trying to get this stuff out. And you go up there today and you look at that overlook and you, I mean, unless you knew where the dam was, everything is growing back and you can't really even tell it's there. I've had the chance to float through there, a lot of the gravel, you know, you're just getting back to form and function of that river, which is pretty neat to see. From a fish standpoint, you've seen this fish spread out into areas above that, but you're not seeing increased population size. I'm not sure why that hasn't occurred yet, because you've opened up more habitat, but the numbers of fish returning seem to be somewhat stable. However, you know, they've moved around and have better opportunity, I think. So be interesting to see how that all.
Are the cabins still there?
Cabins, most of the cabins are still there.
So now they have.
They don't. So it was interesting. I had a lot of interaction with cabins. And, you know, at one point, a couple of them came up and said, okay, look, we understand this is gonna happen. Just don't leave us a mess. And it's like, okay, I appreciate that. And we're not gonna leave you a mess. In fact, we have an obligation to not leave you a mess. So the next slide. We have to restore the area. And so once we did a couple things in the reservoir, we had excavators out there, and where we could, we tried to get back to the original topography of that area. And interestingly enough, you can kind of see it there in the lower picture. The stumps were still there from when the dam was built, right? So these guys are cleaning out some, boom, they hit a stump and it's like, we're close. All right, let's start leveling it off. And so where we could, we tried to do that. And then it was all about public safety. You don't, if we can peel the slope back so no one walks up and the whole thing caves and goes in, you don't want that. So that was top priority. And then you didn't want to have erosive events when you have a heavy rain, right? You don't, this is like, it was like tearing off a Band-Aid, right? You just, let's do it all at once. Let's muck everything up, make a mess for 2 years, and then be done with it. And that's what we did, right? As opposed to, let's do a little bit, oh, let's wait, let's do a little bit and wait. And kind of interesting, if you followed the removal up on the Elwha, up on the Olympic Peninsula, that's how they chose to do it. It was a slow process. And then kind of look at this where it was like rip the Band-Aid off. Got to the same spot, but this, I think, allowed, you know, the environment to just kind of restore on its own. We jump-started everything. So you can see, you know, we worked with the local conservation district up there to get the right seed mix that would work, a lot of sand in the soils, trying to get the right nutrients built up so that the plantings, we went in, I think we planted 16,000 trees, conifer, oak, you know, a wide variety. We had a really cool project up at the head of the reservoir where essentially we worked with the Yakima Nation, gave them space, and they went in and planted cultural plantings that will be of benefit to the tribe, both from an educational and hopefully someday a food standpoint. And they just took on ownership of it. So if you go up there now, there's a little interpretive sign, there's a little defined area, and you can go in there, and there's this nice little trail through there that kind of, you know, it's hard. Some of their stuff's not growing, some of it is. It's a really hard place to grow anything because the sand, all that sand that had piled up off of Mount Adams isn't conducive to growing. So getting a nice riparian area. This photo that was taken was, I think, like the first year. The lower one was taken like the first year. It doesn't look like that at all now. I mean, I was out there last fall. There's pine trees that are, 15 foot high. That riparian area of willows, cottonwoods, it's just doing fabulous. So pretty neat to see how, just let it go, you'll do it. And so back to the cabin owners. Some of them now, instead of docks, they had decks. Some of them kept, some of them didn't. A number of folks were like, they don't like it here anymore. And they sold out and moved on. Some of them, I gave a talk right before COVID, like in 2019 or something, back up there. They asked me to come up and talk a little bit to the local community. And I asked the question, how many of you were around when this happened? And only half the people raised their hand. A lot of people moved in. And so, of the people that lived there when this happened, I would say there's only about 40% of them that are still there. So there's been a pretty good turnover. There were some cabins that were deemed unsafe because of the way the slope was. And so I think we bought out 3 cabins and had those demolished and removed. And then there was at least 2 or 3 other cabins where we went in and did quite a bit of foundation work to support them. And then one of the things with the loss of the reservoir, a lot of wells went dry. And so we ended up working and basically covering everybody's costs to drill deeper so that they had access to water. So just a couple of things, you think about, but you really don't know, right? This was at the time before LWA, the largest dam removal in the country. It was okay, plan for everything, plan for all sorts of contingencies, but be ready to be nimble. Okay, next slide. All right, Klamath. So I did not work on this. And so what I'm giving you is basically an update that was provided by the Klamath Renewable Corporation. So a couple things here that are different than Condit. On Condit, PacifiCorp, we went through the removal, we hired the contractors, we oversaw the remediation of the reservoir and all that sort of stuff. On Klamath, that's not how it played out. A little different story there. So in 2000, we start to look at, okay, we're going to get a new license to operate these hydroelectric projects. It's our intent to keep the hydro. It's a renewable resource. It has value. Same issue though, no fish passage into the upper basin. And so again, the federal government is like, you need to provide fish passage. So we started to look at trap and haul. Nope, need ladders. Start to look at the economics. The tribe down there, the Yurok, Karuks, and Hoopa, thank you. All had a strong interest to see that ecosystem be restored, not only in our area, but further upstream. And they'll continue to work on that. And so it ultimately, in 2004, we submitted a license application to the Fed saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. And everybody booed us because of what we proposed. But, it's like, what is cost effective for our customers? What do we think would work? Agencies, NOAA Fisheries, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, have the ability to trump that. And so they basically said that's what's going to happen. But how can we work together? Ultimately, everybody wants these projects out. And so in 2010, we signed a settlement agreement with those 3 tribes, Fed states, both Oregon and California, and a number of non-governmental groups like American Rivers, Trout Unlimited, which provided the framework towards removing the 4 dams on the Klamath River. Again, this was a business decision for PacifiCorp. We were considering things in light of customer costs, where we're going to find offsetting power, all those sorts of things. And so one of the things that worked in the settlement agreement was PacifiCorp was not responsible for all the costs of those removals. And so we had a good portion of it. I think our portion, company's portion was $250 million. And then I think that was about a third of it or something like that. And so the states of Oregon and the states of California also contributed towards the cost to cover removal. Now, you have, okay, it's like, well, we're not interested in taking these projects out, taking on that responsibility. Neither state had an interest, so the Klamath Renewal Corporation became the owner, ultimately took on the FERC license, surrendered that license, and they're the ones now who are removing those projects. Yes, sir.
You guys plan on building new dams?
New dams. I'm gonna hold that question because not sort of yes, not in the traditional sense. So let me finish this decommissioning and I'll jump right back to that. Does that work great? So demolition began last year, is ongoing. If you have an interest, go look at the website. There's a lot of stuff on there, a lot of history and things like that. So next few slides are just a couple of pictures that the Renewable Corporation showed. So this is J.C. Boyle. This is up in Oregon. It was a smaller dam, but it took advantage of a really steep drop, and that was an 80 megawatt project. That's being removed. So you can see here, they've started taking out the fish ladder. This was the flow line that went to the powerhouse. That's been taken out. The reservoir's been dewatered. They're already starting to resculpture reservoir area. So that one's underway. Next one. This is Copco 2. No, I'm sorry, this is Copco 1. This was much like Condit. This is much like Merwin Dam, kind of that big arch concrete in a canyon. And same way they did at Condit, just going out, beating on it, beat it to rubble and haul it off is essentially what they're doing. So that started, these photos are from earlier this month. You can see they're also starting to take the powerhouse apart. Next slide. This Iron Gate, it's kind of like Swift Dam, big ocean dam. The top photo is before decommissioning. And then these two lower ones, you can see they're basically using an excavator, picking up the dam, putting it in dump trucks, hauling it off the disposal site. And then that's what the reservoir looks like with the breach of that dam. That's Klamath River flowing through it. You can see some of the grass seed and others starting to take place. So it'll
Is that
be
the same
interesting to see.
little mound on the bottom right as it's the top picture? That mound that in the background of the mound? Is that the same?
Yes.
Same one?
Yeah, so that and that are the same.
Same one?
Yeah, so that gives you kind of the view back, right? So this photo is probably not right on the dam, but kind of down in that area like that. So, yeah. Okay, we'll do the question. So back to your point, are we looking at new dams? We are not looking at new dams in the traditional sense like these right here, which dam a river and provide a reservoir or dam a river and divert flows into hydroelectric. What we are looking at is what we call open loop pump storage. And that is putting in another reservoir associated with the current reservoir, right? So you already have these big reservoirs in place. So let's build a new reservoir up here on the hillside. And, when we have surplus energy, all this solar coming out of California, let's pump water up, hold it, and then when there's a demand, you can release that water back into the reservoir. So a dam, yeah, you're gonna have to build a dam, you're gonna have to build a reservoir, right? And each project's gonna be different depending on the geology and can you find spots where, ideally you wanna find a spot where, hey, I can just build this little dam. There's already 3/4 of it built because of the natural topography. We're looking at those. To build a pump storage, it's a long lead time. right? You're talking 10 years to get to something like that. What is it? Why would we need pump storage? Well, we needed to deal with those intermittent resources like wind and solar, right? When the wind's not blowing, solar's not there. We're relying on our hydro, but we can't do it with the hydro system we have right now.
It also displaced one much of California, like doing heat.
Exactly, right? And so that plays into it, right? Where people are looking at that because with everybody working together, there are times that are good, lots of power, and other times where power is needed. So that battery can do it. So one of the things, it's not in my group, it's a different engineering group. They're looking at resources like pump storage versus batteries, right? Versus nuclear, versus additional wind, versus, more, I don't know. They're exploring all sorts of stuff. I mean, we have stuff over on Rocky Mountain Power side where they have solar and they have batteries in the apartment complex. And, if all of a sudden there's a need, we have like one of the big power plants goes down or something, we need power right away. We can draw on that power and they lose their air conditioning because we're taking their power from them, but they get compensated, right? And you like, all right, new Tesla, there's a battery sitting there. Hey, how much would you allow me to use that? I mean, there's all sorts of weird ideas, right, around battery storage and everything. Say that again? Batteries totally carry their own environmental. Oh yeah, horrific, yeah. Right. No, and the difference with the pump storage that you have to think about is like these dams, they can be over 100 years old, right? The technology has been around forever. It's becoming more efficient. You can build these that have, little environmental consequence, especially if it's a closed loop where you have two swimming pools interacting, going back and forth, and you don't even allow fishing. And it's all fenced off. There's no recreation, and there's no wildlife issue. Or you minimize those through allowing animals to cross over the flow lines and stuff like that. So, but those will last forever. How long is the battery going to last? Right. I mean, you're seeing that with the wind blades, right? Like you hear these big fiberglass how do you recycle those? For the most part, you do. I mean, there was a Tennessee university or somebody's working on, what you can do. And eventually it will get to recycle. But right now, a lot of that just goes flying. So, yes.
Another question on the chat regarding, it's a question from the chat here. I'm going to read it directly, although I don't know what this means, but are there any plans to if he means bringing salmon spawning into the, I don't know how to pronounce it, Susan Creek watershed?
Susan.
Yeah.
Yes. So Susan Creek is a tributary into Yale Reservoir. And so we do want to provide fish passage into Yale Reservoir. And so, a couple, 3-4 years from now, once those facilities are built, we'll be putting salmon into there so that they can go up to Susan and allow salmon to take advantage of that happening. So, yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Good. Okay. Any other questions? You guys have been great. I love sharing things like this. Yes, go ahead.
One question. Is there a reason that you choose to chip away as opposed to?
Yeah, so the question is, why do you chip away on these dams? Why don't you just start blowing them apart? Selectively, you can, and that, I learned that at Condit. It's an art, right? And they were drilling they were blasting the tunnel through this dam that had all this water behind it. Okay. Right, and so they drill a pattern and blow it, clear it out, drill a pattern, blow it. So they're blowing like little sections.
Also, they do combination, chip away.
Right. Well, they blow the tunnel to do the initial breach. So then it blows through, and then all the water's coming through the tunnel. I think it was just cost effective. It took three guys banging away on that for a year. Whereas if we were going to, do selective dynamite, you'd have to have the expert team there blow it, and then they'd be sitting there waiting while they all got scraped off. And it was just technical. So, yeah, there's probably some time though where I could see where there might be some section of a dam that you just can't reach and you're gonna have to blow it. So, I mean, it's a tool in the toolbox. Yeah.
They end up blowing a little bit, so they reduce the pressure. Not water, but reservoir, and once it's flowing freely, then they can easily take the dam down. That's the dam.
Oh, but you got control over that.
No, great question. Everybody, great question. It's been fun tonight. Thanks so much. If you got, visit our website. I mean, we've got recreation stuff, we've got fish and wildlife stuff. We've got my contacts on there, our recreation contacts on there. So yeah, great resources. PacifiCorp.com. Go there, or you can Google, if you want to know more about Condit, PacifiCorp Condit removal, and in Google, and they'll pop right up. Cool. Thank you.